Welcome to my channel, Bookish English 2. I am Adam, and today I am going to break a belief that has been silently stopping you for years. You were told that English is difficult, that you need thousands of words, and that fluency takes forever. But your struggle was never about your ability. It was always about the wrong direction. You have learned, you have tried, and still something feels missing because knowing English is not the same as speaking English. This video is not for everyone. This video is for you if you feel stuck in silence, if you understand but cannot respond, and if you are tired of starting again and again without real progress. What you are about to learn is a focused system built on just 487 core words, powerful sentence patterns, and real-life usage that turns hesitation into flow and confusion into clarity. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will not just learn English. You will finally start using it with confidence, control, and a voice that feels truly yours. Chapter 1. The Hidden English Truth. English has more than 170,000 words. That number sounds powerful, but it also creates quiet pressure inside your mind. You hear it, and something inside you says, "This is too much." You begin to feel that fluency is far away. You start thinking that maybe English is not for you. This feeling is common, but it is not correct. The size of a language is not the same as the part of the language people actually use every day. That difference is the hidden truth, and once you understand it, everything begins to change. Real communication does not work the way most learners imagine. People do not search through thousands of words when they speak. They do not open a mental dictionary and choose the perfect word. Instead, they use a small, familiar group of words again and again. They repeat patterns. They reuse structures. They focus on meaning, not on complexity. Even native speakers who understand many words rely on a limited set in daily life. They speak clearly, they speak smoothly, and they do not feel pressure. This shows something very important. Fluency is not about knowing everything. Fluency is about using what matters and using it with confidence. There is a deeper problem that many learners never notice. It is the gap between passive vocabulary and active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary includes the words you understand when you read or listen. Active vocabulary includes the words you can actually use when you speak. Most learners have a large passive vocabulary. They recognize many words. They understand many sentences. But when it is time to speak, they struggle. Why? Because their active vocabulary is small. The words are in the mind, but they are not ready in the mouth. This gap creates frustration. It creates doubt. And slowly, it creates fear. Fluency begins when words move from recognition into use. That movement does not happen by adding more words. It happens by repeating the right words in real situations. When too many new words enter your learning process, your brain becomes overloaded. It slows down. It hesitates. It searches too much. This delay breaks your speaking flow. But when the number of words is reduced, something powerful happens. Your brain begins to move faster. It works with a smaller system. It feels more in control. And when control increases, confidence grows. A focused system changes everything. The idea of 487 core words is not random. It is built on frequency, usefulness, and flexibility. These words appear again and again in real conversations. They help you express needs. They help you describe situations. They allow you to communicate clearly without unnecessary difficulty. Each word becomes stronger because it is used in many different ways. One word can create many sentences. One structure can express many ideas. This is how language becomes efficient. Language does not grow through memorization alone. It grows through use. Use becomes easier when the system feels simple and manageable. When you work with a limited set of words, your brain begins to recognize patterns quickly. Sentences form with less effort. Your thinking becomes faster. Your speaking becomes smoother. You begin to feel a sense of control. That feeling is important because it reduces anxiety. It removes confusion. It allows you to move forward without fear. Your emotional state plays a powerful role in speaking. The brain reacts differently under pressure and comfort. When you try to use complex words, your brain feels uncertain. That uncertainty creates hesitation. Your speech slows down. Your confidence drops. But when you use simple and familiar words, your brain feels safe. It relaxes. It allows your thoughts to flow naturally. This is not a small detail. This is a key principle. Safety creates speed. Speed creates fluency. This process is clearly visible in children. They do not learn language by memorizing thousands of words. They listen. They repeat. They use simple words again and again. They make mistakes, but they continue speaking. They do not wait for perfection. They focus on expression. That is why their progress is fast. The same method works for you. Simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is power. Daily life already gives you everything you need. Your routine is full of language opportunities. You wake up, you eat, you work, you talk, you feel, you plan, you react. Every one of these actions can be expressed with simple words. You do not need advanced vocabulary for this. You need clarity. You need repetition. You need consistency. When you connect language with real life, your memory becomes stronger. Your brain links words with experiences. This makes recall faster. It makes speaking easier. The idea that you must be perfect before you speak is one of the biggest obstacles. It creates silence. It creates delay. It stops progress. Communication does not depend on perfection. It depends on understanding. If people understand you, your communication is successful. Simple sentences can achieve this. Clear ideas can achieve this. When you accept this truth, pressure disappears. You begin to speak more. You begin to improve faster. Progress is not measured by how many words you know. It is measured by how easily you can use them. A smaller, well-practiced vocabulary can produce stronger results than a large, unorganized one. Familiar words move faster in your mind. They come out naturally. They create flow. That flow is what people call fluency. It is not about speed alone. It is about comfort, clarity, and confidence working together. When your focus shifts from quantity to quality, your learning becomes stronger. Each word becomes more useful. Each sentence becomes easier. Each moment of speaking builds your confidence. Fear begins to fade. You start to feel progress. That feeling motivates you. It pushes you forward. It creates a cycle of improvement. Small steps lead to big change. English becomes a tool when you use it this way. It stops being a subject. It becomes part of your life. You use it to share ideas. You use it to express feelings. You use it to connect with people. Meaning becomes more important than perfection. And when meaning is clear, communication becomes powerful. This is how real fluency begins. Not with thousands of words, but with the right words used again and again, until they become part of you. Chapter 2. The 4-8-7 Core System. A powerful system always feels simple on the surface, but underneath that simplicity, there is clear structure, careful selection, and intelligent design. The idea of 487 core words works in exactly this way. It is not a random number, and it is not a shortcut based on luck. It is a focused system built on how real language behaves in daily life. When words are chosen based on frequency, usefulness, and flexibility, they begin to work together as a complete communication tool. This changes the learning experience because the learner is no longer chasing thousands of words without direction. Instead, the learner is working inside a system that is small enough to manage and strong enough to produce real results. Every word inside this system has a purpose, and that purpose becomes clear when the words are grouped into functional categories. Pronouns create direction in conversation because they tell us who is involved. Words like I, you, we, and they are simple, but they control the flow of meaning. Core verbs bring action into language. Words such as go, come, make, take, and work appear again and again because almost every situation involves some form of action. Nouns anchor communication in reality. Words like time, food, home, and money connect language to everyday life. Adjectives add color and emotion. Words like good, bad, big, small, happy, and tired help express feelings and descriptions clearly. Then there are the small connecting words that hold everything together. Words like to, for, with, and because may look simple, but they create smooth and natural sentences. When these categories begin to interact, something powerful happens. Language stops feeling like a collection of separate pieces and starts feeling like a connected system. A single pronoun combined with a simple verb can create a complete idea. When that idea is expanded with a noun or an adjective, it becomes clearer and more expressive. This is how a small group of words can produce a large number of sentences. The strength of the system does not come from size, it comes from connection. There is an important concept that explains this clearly, and that concept can be called the word multiplication effect. One simple word does not create just one sentence. It creates many possibilities. The word go can become I go home, I go to work, I go with you, I go every day, I go because I need to. The structure changes, the meaning expands, and the same word continues to work in different situations. This multiplication effect means that the learner does not need new words to create new sentences. The learner needs practice with the same words in different ways. This is where the system becomes powerful for the brain. The human brain does not like confusion, but it responds very well to repetition and pattern. When a learner works with a limited number of words, the brain begins to recognize them faster. It processes them without delay. It connects them with real experiences. Over time, these words move from effort to automatic use. This is the moment when speaking begins to feel natural. The learner is no longer building sentences slowly. The learner is expressing ideas smoothly. Another important advantage appears when the system reduces the number of choices. Too many choices create hesitation. When the brain has to search through a large vocabulary, it becomes slow and uncertain. But when the brain works with a smaller set of familiar words, it becomes faster and more confident. This speed is not forced. It comes from clarity. When clarity increases, speaking becomes easier, and when speaking becomes easier, confidence grows naturally. This system also changes the emotional experience of learning. Many learners feel pressure because they believe they must know more before they can speak. That belief creates delay. It creates silence. When the system shows that a small group of words is enough to begin, the pressure disappears. The learner feels relief. That relief is important because it opens the door to action. Action creates progress, and progress builds motivation. The flexibility of these 487 words allows them to cover a wide range of daily situations. A learner can describe actions, express needs, share opinions, and communicate feelings without needing complex vocabulary. This does not mean the language is limited. It means the language is focused. Focus creates strength. When a learner can handle daily communication with confidence, the foundation becomes strong. A strong foundation supports future growth. More words can always be added later, but they will be added on top of a system that already works. It is also important to understand that this system is not about restriction. It is about efficiency. Instead of spreading energy across thousands of words, the learner concentrates on mastering a smaller group. Mastery brings control. Control brings speed. Speed brings fluency. This progression is natural when the system is clear and consistent. As practice continues, the same words begin to feel easier. The same sentences begin to come out faster. The learner starts to notice small changes. Speaking becomes less stressful. Thinking becomes less heavy. The language begins to feel like a tool instead of a problem. This shift is powerful because it transforms the entire experience of learning. The idea is simple, but the impact is strong. When the right words are used again and again, they become part of the learner. They move from memory into habit. And when language becomes a habit, fluency is no longer something far away. It becomes something that grows step by step through daily use. Chapter 3. Power of Sentence Patterns. Words alone do not create speech, and this is where many learners quietly struggle without understanding the real reason. A learner may know hundreds of words, may recognize them while reading or listening, and may even feel confident for a moment. But when it is time to speak, everything slows down. The mind searches for the right combination. The mouth waits for clarity, and the sentence does not come out smoothly. This happens because words are only the building blocks. What truly creates speech is the structure that connects those words into meaningful patterns. When structure is missing, words remain isolated. When structure becomes strong, words begin to flow naturally. Sentence patterns are the hidden engine behind fluent speaking. They work like ready-made pathways in the brain. Instead of creating a sentence from zero every time, the brain uses a familiar structure and simply changes a few words inside it. This reduces effort, increases speed, and creates confidence. When a learner understands this deeply, learning becomes easier because the focus shifts from memorizing more words to mastering a few powerful patterns. This is the moment when language begins to feel manageable instead of overwhelming. A strong pattern carries a clear function. Some patterns help express desire. Others help express need, intention, or preference. For example, a simple structure like I want to can produce many sentences. I want to eat. I want to learn. I want to go. I want to speak English. The pattern stays the same, but the meaning changes with a single word. This is efficiency. Another structure such as I need to works in a similar way. It expresses necessity and responsibility. I need to work. I need to study. I need to rest. I need to call someone. The learner does not need new grammar for each idea. The learner needs repetition of a strong pattern. Patterns also allow the learner to talk about time. A structure like I am going to naturally expresses future intention. I am going to learn. I am going to travel. I am going to improve my English. The same structure repeats, and the brain begins to recognize it instantly. Over time, the learner does not think about the structure. The structure becomes automatic. This process can be described as pattern automation. When patterns become automatic, the learner stops building sentences slowly and starts speaking without hesitation. This is a key step toward real fluency. The brain prefers patterns because patterns reduce complexity. When the same structure appears again and again, the brain builds a shortcut. It no longer analyzes every word. It recognizes the pattern as a whole. This saves energy. It increases speed. It allows the learner to focus on meaning instead of form. When meaning becomes the focus, communication becomes smoother. This is why repetition is powerful. Repetition is not boring. Repetition is the process that builds fluency. There is also a clear difference between two types of learners. One learner collects vocabulary and studies rules, but rarely speaks. This learner knows many words, but struggles to use them. Another learner practices patterns and repeats simple sentences daily. This learner may know fewer words, but speaks more confidently. The difference is not intelligence. The difference is method. Patterns create action. Action creates fluency. Without action, knowledge remains inactive. A small number of patterns combined with the 487 core words can produce hundreds of sentences. This is where the system becomes powerful. The learner does not feel lost. The learner feels guided. Each pattern becomes a tool. Each word becomes a flexible piece inside that tool. Together, they create a system that is easy to use and easy to remember. This combination allows the learner to express ideas quickly, even with simple language. Patterns also help reduce fear. When a learner knows that a structure is correct and familiar, there is less hesitation. The mind does not stop to question every word. It follows the pattern and moves forward. This creates a smooth flow of speech. That flow is more important than perfection. When speech flows, communication feels natural. When communication feels natural, confidence grows. It is important to notice that patterns are not limited to one situation. The same structure can be used in different contexts. A sentence used in the morning can be adjusted for work, for conversation, or for planning. This flexibility means that the learner does not need a new system for every situation. One system can serve many purposes. This reduces confusion and increases clarity. As practice continues, the learner begins to feel a shift. Sentences come faster. Words feel lighter. Speaking becomes less stressful. This change is not sudden, but it is real. It happens step by step through repetition and use. The learner begins to trust the process. That trust is important because it keeps the learner consistent. Consistency builds habit. Habit builds fluency. Language becomes easier when patterns guide the process. Words no longer feel scattered. They become part of a connected system. The learner moves from thinking about language to using language. This movement is the true goal. When patterns become strong, speaking becomes natural. And when speaking becomes natural, fluency is no longer a distant goal. It becomes a result of daily practice and clear structure. Chapter 4. Real-Life English. Flow language becomes powerful the moment it leaves the page and enters real life. Many learners spend months studying rules and memorizing words, yet they still feel uncomfortable when they try to speak because their learning stays disconnected from their daily experience. Real English does not live inside books. It lives inside moments. It lives in the way you describe your morning, the way you explain your work, the way you ask for help, and the way you express how you feel. When language connects with life, it becomes easier to remember, easier to use, and much more natural to speak. Daily life already gives you everything you need to practice, and this is where a simple system becomes powerful. The moment you wake up, you already have sentences inside your life. You can say that you wake up early, you feel tired, you need water, you want to rest. These are not complex ideas, but they are real, and real language is always easier to learn than abstract language. When you describe your own life, your brain does not struggle to find meaning because the meaning is already clear. This creates a strong connection between words and experience, and that connection builds memory faster than memorization alone. As your day continues, new situations appear naturally. You go to work or you go to study. You feel busy, you feel relaxed. You talk to people, you complete tasks. Each of these moments can be expressed using the same small group of words. The power of this approach comes from repetition in different contexts. The words stay the same, but the situation changes, and this creates flexibility. Your brain learns that one word can work in many places, and this understanding removes the need to search for new vocabulary all the time. Instead of learning more, you begin to use better. Communication with other people becomes simpler when you rely on clear and direct language. Asking for help, sharing information, or explaining a problem does not require complicated sentences. It requires clarity. When you say that you need help, or you want to ask something, or you do not understand, you are already communicating effectively. The goal is not to sound perfect. The goal is to be understood. This idea changes everything because it removes pressure and replaces it with purpose. Feelings are another important part of real-life communication, and many learners struggle here because they believe they need advanced vocabulary to express emotions. In reality, simple words are often enough. You can say that you feel happy, you feel tired, you feel nervous, or you feel excited. These expressions are clear, and they are used in real conversations every day. When you learn to express feelings with simple language, your communication becomes more personal and more meaningful. People connect with clarity, not with complexity. There is also a common fear related to grammar, especially when talking about the past or the future. Many learners hesitate because they are worried about making mistakes. This hesitation creates silence, and silence stops progress. In real communication, clarity is more important than perfect grammar. A simple sentence that is slightly incorrect but easy to understand is more valuable than a perfect sentence that is never spoken. When you say that you went to work yesterday or you will study tomorrow, even in simple form, the listener understands your message. This understanding is what matters. A useful way to think about this is through the idea of communication success. Communication is successful when the listener understands your message. It does not depend on perfect grammar or advanced vocabulary. It depends on clarity, confidence, and consistency. When you focus on these three elements, your speaking improves naturally. You begin to trust your ability to express yourself, and that trust reduces fear. Real-life practice also builds speed because it removes the need to translate. When you connect English directly to your experiences, your brain stops converting from one language to another. It begins to think in English because the situation is already clear. This process takes time, but it becomes stronger with repetition. The more you describe your life in English, the more natural it feels. Over time, you begin to think and speak without hesitation. Consistency is the key factor that turns this approach into real progress. Speaking a few sentences every day may feel small, but it creates a strong habit. That habit trains your brain and your mouth together. Each sentence becomes easier. Each day builds confidence. When confidence grows, you speak more, and when you speak more, you improve faster. This cycle continues and becomes stronger with time. Real English is not something you wait for. It is something you create through daily use. Your life is already full of opportunities. Every action, every thought, every feeling can become a sentence. When you use the same simple words again and again in real situations, those words become part of you. They move from effort to habit. They become automatic. This is how flow begins. The moment language feels connected to your life, it stops being a subject and becomes a skill. You do not study it, you use it. You do not memorize it, you live it. And when you live it, Fluency grows naturally, step by step, through real moments that you experience every single day. Chapter 5. Smart Practice Method. Practice is the point where everything either becomes real or remains an idea, and many learners lose progress not because they lack ability, but because their practice is unclear, inconsistent, or passive. Watching videos, reading lessons, and collecting information can feel productive. Yet speaking does not improve unless the mouth becomes active and the brain begins to connect words with real use. A smart method changes this completely because it turns practice into a simple, repeatable system that builds skills step by step. When the system is clear, the learner does not waste energy deciding what to do, and that clarity creates consistency. A strong practice method begins with focus. Instead of trying to learn too many words at once, a small group of words is selected from the 487 core system. This limited selection reduces pressure and allows deeper repetition. When the same words are used again and again, they become familiar, and familiarity is what creates speed. The goal is not to memorize quickly, but to use naturally. A learner who practices 10 words deeply will progress faster than a learner who touches 50 words without repetition, because depth creates control, and control builds confidence. The next step in this method is sentence creation, and this step must be active, not passive. Words become powerful only when they are placed inside sentences that carry meaning. Creating simple sentences with selected words trains the brain to connect ideas with language. These sentences do not need to be complex. They need to be clear and repeated. When the same sentence is spoken multiple times, the brain begins to recognize the pattern, and the mouth begins to move more smoothly. This is where learning becomes physical, not just mental. Repetition is often misunderstood, but it is one of the strongest tools in language learning. When a sentence is repeated over several days, it moves from short-term memory into long-term memory. This process is known as spaced repetition, and it allows the brain to strengthen connections over time instead of forgetting information quickly. When repetition is done correctly, each repetition feels easier than the last. The learner begins to notice that the sentence comes out faster and with less effort. That change is a sign of real progress. Another powerful technique inside this method is shadow speaking. This technique combines listening and speaking in a synchronized way. The learner listens to a sentence, pauses, and repeats it out loud. This process trains pronunciation, rhythm, and confidence at the same time. When the ear and the mouth work together, the brain builds stronger connections. The learner does not only understand the sentence, but also feels how it is spoken. This feeling is important because it helps the learner speak naturally instead of sounding forced. There is also a physical side to speaking that many learners ignore. Speaking is not only about thinking, it is also about training the muscles involved in speech. The mouth, the tongue, and the vocal cords need practice to move smoothly. This can be understood as the mouth training principle. When sentences are spoken regularly, these muscles become more comfortable, and speech becomes clearer. Without this physical practice, even a strong understanding of words may not lead to fluent speaking. Speed is another area where learners often feel pressure, but speed should not be forced. Clear speaking always comes before fast speaking. When a learner speaks slowly and clearly, the brain has time to process the sentence correctly. Over time, speed increases naturally as the patterns become automatic. Forcing speed too early creates mistakes and reduces confidence. A steady pace builds a strong foundation, and that foundation supports faster speech later. Mistakes are a natural part of this process, and they should not be avoided. Every mistake is a sign that the learner is trying to use the language. Avoiding mistakes leads to silence, and silence stops progress. When mistakes are accepted as part of learning, the learner becomes more active. Each correction improves understanding, and each attempt builds confidence. Progress does not come from perfection. It comes from repeated effort. Consistency is the most important factor in this method. Practicing for a short time every day is more effective than practicing for a long time once in a while. Daily practice creates habit, and habit removes the need for motivation. When speaking becomes part of a daily routine, improvement becomes steady and predictable. Even a few minutes of focused speaking each day can create strong results over time, because the brain continues to build connections without interruption. There is also an important rule that strengthens this method. A word should never be learned alone. A word must always be connected to a sentence. This connection gives the word context, and context makes the word easier to remember and easier to use. When words are learned in isolation, they are easily forgotten. When words are used in sentences, they become part of communication, and communication is what keeps them alive. This method transforms practice from a difficult task into a structured process. Each step has a purpose. Each repetition builds strength. Each sentence moves the learner closer to fluency. The system is simple, but its power comes from consistency and clarity. When practice becomes focused, active, and regular, the learner begins to feel progress. That feeling builds confidence, and confidence leads to more speaking. Over time, speaking becomes easier, faster, and more natural because the learner is no longer guessing. The learner is using a system that works. Chapter 6: Confidence and Brain Training. Confidence in speaking does not begin as a feeling. It begins as a process inside the brain. Many learners wait to feel ready before they speak. Yet that moment rarely arrives because confidence is not a starting point. It is a result of repeated action. When the brain faces uncertainty, it tries to protect you. It slows you down, it creates hesitation, and it pushes you to stay silent. This reaction is natural, but it can be changed. When the brain experiences familiarity and success, even in small amounts, it begins to relax, and this relaxation allows speech to flow more easily. The concept of a safe language zone plays a powerful role here. When you use simple, familiar words from the 487 core system, your brain recognizes them quickly and does not feel threatened. There is no need to search deeply or analyze too much. This creates a sense of safety. When the brain feels safe, it allows faster thinking and smoother speaking. When the brain feels pressure, it becomes slow and cautious. The difference between these two states explains why simple language often produces better speaking than complex language. Overthinking is one of the biggest barriers to fluency, and it often comes from the belief that every sentence must be perfect. This belief forces the brain to check grammar, vocabulary, and structure at the same time. That process takes time, and during that time, speech stops. When the focus shifts from perfection to communication, the brain begins to work differently. It prioritizes meaning instead of accuracy. This change reduces hesitation and allows the learner to continue speaking, even with small mistakes. Repetition plays a direct role in building confidence because it strengthens neural pathways in the brain. Each time you repeat a sentence, the connection becomes stronger. The brain starts to recognize the pattern without effort. After enough repetition, the sentence becomes automatic. This automation reduces the need for conscious thinking, and when thinking decreases, speaking becomes faster. Confidence grows because the learner experiences success again and again. Success, even in simple sentences, is what builds belief. Fear of judgment is another factor that affects speaking. Many learners imagine that others will focus on their mistakes, but in real communication, most people focus on understanding the message. When the message is clear, communication works. This understanding removes a large part of the fear. Speaking becomes less about being correct and more about being understood. When this mindset becomes strong, the learner becomes more willing to speak in different situations. There is also value in practicing alone because it creates a space where pressure is completely removed. Speaking alone allows you to experiment with language, repeat sentences, and express ideas without interruption. This practice builds internal confidence. When you describe your day, your thoughts, or your plans out loud, your brain becomes familiar with the process of speaking. Over time, this familiarity reduces hesitation, even when you speak with others. Another important change happens when the brain begins to think in English instead of translating from another language. Translation slows down speech because it adds an extra step. When you connect English directly to your experiences, this extra step disappears. The brain starts to process ideas in English naturally. This does not happen instantly, but it becomes stronger with consistent practice. The more you use simple sentences in real situations, the more natural this process becomes. Fluency is often misunderstood as fast speaking, but speed alone does not create effective communication. Fluency is the ability to speak comfortably, clearly, and continuously. When you feel comfortable, your speech flows. When your speech flows, your confidence increases. Speed becomes a natural result of this comfort, not a forced effort. This understanding removes unnecessary pressure and allows steady progress. The idea of waiting for the perfect moment to speak creates delay. That moment does not exist because readiness is built through action. Each time you speak, you improve slightly. Each sentence builds experience. Experience builds confidence. This progression is simple, but it is powerful when it is repeated daily. The learner who speaks regularly becomes stronger over time, while the learner who waits for perfection remains stuck. Confidence is not something you find. It is something you build through repeated, simple actions. When you use familiar words, repeat clear sentences, and speak without fear of mistakes, your brain adapts. It becomes faster, more flexible, and more supportive of your efforts. This change is gradual, but it is real. Over time, speaking becomes easier, and what once felt difficult begins to feel natural. Chapter 7. Daily English Transformation Plan. Real change begins when learning turns into a daily system, because without a system, even strong motivation slowly fades, while a clear routine keeps progress steady and predictable. Many learners try different methods, watch many lessons, and collect useful ideas, yet they do not see strong results because their practice is not organized. A structured daily plan solves this problem by giving direction to effort and turning small actions into long-term improvement. When the process becomes simple and repeatable, the mind stops resisting, and learning becomes part of life instead of a separate task. A powerful routine works best when it follows the natural rhythm of the day. The morning is the moment when the mind is fresh and the voice is ready to begin. So speaking at this time activates your English thinking. You describe simple things. You talk about your plans, your feelings, and your intentions. You use familiar words from your core system. This practice is not about complexity. It is about starting the day with active language. When you speak early, your brain shifts into English mode, and this shift makes it easier to continue using English throughout the day. As the day continues, listening becomes an important part of the process because it feeds the brain with natural language. Listening does not require full understanding. It requires exposure. When you hear simple English through audio, conversation, or video, your brain begins to absorb patterns, sounds, and rhythm. This creates a background learning process that strengthens your speaking ability without pressure. Over time, the words and structures you hear begin to feel familiar, and this familiarity supports your active use when you speak. The evening creates a perfect moment for reflection and reinforcement because it allows you to use English to describe what has already happened. You speak about your day. You talk about your actions, your experiences, and your feelings. This practice connects language with real memory, and this connection makes learning stronger. When you repeat this process daily, your brain builds a cycle where speaking, listening, and reflecting work together. This cycle is powerful because it covers the most important aspects of language without creating stress. Consistency plays a critical role in this transformation because even a simple routine loses its power if it is not followed regularly. Short daily practice creates stronger results than long but irregular sessions. When you speak every day, even for a few minutes, your brain stays connected to the language. This continuous connection prevents forgetting and builds gradual improvement. Missing one day may not seem important, but repeated gaps weaken the habit and slow down progress. A small, steady routine creates strength over time. Another important element of this plan is repetition of the same words and patterns. Many learners feel the need to change content every day, but this creates confusion and slows down learning. Repeating the same words allows the brain to move from effort to automatic use. When a word is repeated in different sentences and situations, it becomes flexible and easy to use. This flexibility is more valuable than learning new words that are not fully understood. Mastery of a small system creates confidence that can support future growth. Recording your voice adds another layer of improvement because it allows you to hear your own progress. When you listen to your speaking, you notice small changes in clarity, pronunciation, and confidence. This feedback helps you adjust naturally without external pressure. It also creates motivation because you can see your improvement over time. Progress becomes visible, and visible progress builds belief. Staying committed to one method is also important because frequent changes create confusion. When you move from one system to another, your brain does not have enough time to adapt. A clear method needs time to show results. Trusting the process and staying consistent allows the system to work fully. Over time, the results become clear, and the learner begins to feel more confident and more capable. The transformation that comes from this routine is gradual but strong. At the beginning, speaking may feel slow and uncertain, but each day adds a small improvement. Sentences become easier, words come faster, hesitation becomes smaller, confidence grows without force. This change does not come from sudden effort, but from repeated daily action. The learner moves from thinking too much to speaking more naturally. The purpose of this entire process is not to create perfect English, but to create usable English. When language becomes usable, it becomes part of your life. You use it to express ideas, share experiences, and communicate with others. This practical use is what defines real fluency. It is not about knowing everything, but about using what you know effectively. A simple truth becomes clear through this journey. English is not talent, and it is not luck. It is a skill that grows through consistent use, clear structure, and focused practice. The 487 core words provide a strong foundation. Sentence patterns create structure. Real-life use builds flexibility. Smart practice strengthens ability. Confidence grows through repetition. When all these elements come together inside a daily routine, improvement becomes natural and steady. The path is simple, but it requires action. Each day offers a new opportunity to practice, to speak, and to improve. Small steps may feel slow at first, but they create lasting results. When you continue, when you stay consistent, and when you trust the process, English becomes easier, clearer, and more natural. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes comfortable, and what once felt impossible becomes part of your daily life. Now everything is clear. You do not need thousands of words. You need the right system, daily action, and belief in your voice. Start small, stay consistent, and speak without fear, because fluency grows from use, not perfection. This is your moment to change your English journey and make it real. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video.